I froze at the top of the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. The sounds coming from our bedroom were unmistakable, a woman's giggle followed by my husband Ted's low chuckle. My hands trembled as I gripped the banister, willing myself to move. "Oh, Ted," a breathy voice cooed. "You're so bad." I felt bile rise in my throat. This couldn't be happening, not in our home, not in our bed. With shaky steps, I approached the partially open door. I should have turned and run, pretended I'd never heard a thing. But my body moved of its own accord, pushing the door wide. The sight before me knocked the wind from my lungs. Ted, my husband of 15 years, tangled in our sheets with a woman I recognized as Lisa from his office. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with shock. "Natalie?" Ted scrambled to cover himself, nearly tumbling off the bed. I can explain." I stood frozen, unable to form words as Lisa gathered her clothes, face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she mumbled, ducking past me and fleeing down the stairs. The slam of the front door jolted me back to reality. I turned to Ted, who was hastily pulling on his pants. "Explain?" I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Explain how you could do this to me? To our family?" Ted ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Natalie, please. It's not what you think." "Not what I think." My voice rose, anger finally breaking through the shock. "I just caught you in bed with another woman, in our home." "Keep your voice down," Ted hissed. "The boys might hear." I laughed bitterly. "Oh, now you're worried about the boys? Where was that concern when you were screwing your coworker?" Ted's face hardened. "Maybe if you paid more attention to me instead of obsessing over the kids all the time, this wouldn't have happened." His words hit me like a slap. "Are you seriously blaming me for your affair?" "It's not an affair," Ted insisted. "It was a mistake, a one-time thing." "Don't lie to me," I spat. "I've seen the way you look at her at company parties. How long has this been going on?" Ted's silence was all the answer I needed. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my legs no longer able to support me. "I gave up everything for you," I whispered. "My career, my independence, and this is how you repay me?" "Natalie, please." Ted knelt before me, reaching for my hands. I jerked away from his touch. "We can work through this, for the boys' sake." The mention of our children snapped something inside me. I stood abruptly, nearly knocking Ted over. "Don't you dare use our sons as an excuse," I snarled. "You should have thought about them before you invited that woman into our bed." I stormed out of the room, Ted's pleas falling on deaf ears. In a daze, I found myself in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter as sobs racked my body. The sound of small feet on the stairs made me hastily wipe my eyes. 10-year-old Jake appeared in the doorway, his younger brother Ethan close behind. "Mom?" Jake's brow furrowed with concern. "Are you okay? We heard yelling." I forced a smile, my heart breaking at the worry in his eyes. "Everything's fine, sweetie. Mommy and Daddy just had a little disagreement." Jake didn't look convinced, but nodded slowly. "Okay, can we have some ice cream?" "Sure," I said, grateful for the distraction. As I scooped Rocky Road into bowls, my mind raced. What was I going to do? How could I face Ted after this? And most importantly, how would I protect my boys from the fallout of their father's betrayal? One thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. I stared at the framed photo on my nightstand, a reminder of happier times. Ted and I on our wedding day, faces beaming with hope and love. How quickly things had changed. The bedroom door creaked open, and Ted's reflection appeared in the mirror. "Natalie, we need to talk," I turned, steeling myself. "About what? How you destroyed our marriage." Ted sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know I messed up, but we can fix this. Remember how good we used to be together?" His words transported me back to our early days. I'd been a rising star at my marketing firm, burning the midnight oil to climb the corporate ladder. Then I met Ted. "You swept me off my feet," I said softly. "Made me believe in fairy tales." Ted's eyes lit up. "We can have that again. I'll do whatever it takes." I shook my head, the spell broken. "No, Ted, you don't get it. This isn't just about the affair. It's about everything that led to it." "What do you mean?" "Remember when you convinced me to quit my job?" I asked, anger rising. "You promised to take care of me, said we'd be partners, but that's not what happened, is it?" Ted's face darkened. "I provide for this family. What more do you want?" "A husband who respects me," I shot back. "Who doesn't treat me like a glorified maid and nanny." "That's not fair," Ted protested. I work hard to give you and the boys everything. Everything except your time and attention, I countered. When was the last time we had a real conversation that wasn't about bills or the kids' schedules? Ted fell silent, unable to meet my gaze. I gave up my career for you, I continued, years of resentment pouring out. And what did I get in return? A husband who's never home, who belittles my contributions, who seeks comfort in another woman's arms. I said I was sorry about Lisa, Ted mumbled. Sorry isn't enough, I exploded. Do you have any idea how it feels to discover your husband's betrayal in your own home? To realize that the life you've built is a lie? Ted's jaw clenched. You're not innocent in this, Natalie. You've been distant for years, always focused on the kids, never making time for us. His words hit like a punch to the gut. Are you seriously blaming me for your affair? I'm saying we're both responsible for the state of our marriage, Ted replied, his voice rising. But you're acting like I'm the only one at fault here. I laughed bitterly. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize neglecting you justified sleeping with your coworker. That's not what I meant, and you know it, Ted growled. I'm trying to have an honest conversation here, but you're twisting everything I say. Honest? I scoffed. That's rich coming from you. How long would you have continued lying to me if I hadn't caught you? Ted's silence spoke volumes. That's what I thought, I said, turning away. I think you should sleep in the guest room tonight. Natalie, please, Ted pleaded. We can work through this, for the boys' sake, if nothing else. I whirled back to face him, fury blazing in my chest. Don't you dare use our children as an excuse. You should have thought about them before you invited that woman into our bed. Ted's face crumpled. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I love you, Natalie. I love our family. Please give me another chance. For a moment, I wavered. The pain in his eyes was genuine, and part of me longed to believe him. But then I remembered the sounds of his laughter with Lisa, the casual way he'd blamed me for his infidelity. I need time, I said finally. Time to think, to figure out what I want. Can you give me that? Ted nodded slowly. Whatever you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk. As he left the room, I sank onto the bed, my mind reeling. Could we salvage our marriage? Did I even want to try? One thing was certain, I couldn't continue living in this limbo. Something had to change, and soon. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the divorce papers in front of me. The weight of my decision pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. A week had passed since I'd caught Ted with Lisa, and the wound still felt raw. The sound of the front door opening jolted me from my thoughts. Ted walked in, his eyes immediately landing on the papers. "What's this?" he asked, his voice tight. I took a deep breath. "I think you know, Ted. I can't do this anymore." His face contorted with anger. "You're seriously considering divorce? After everything we've been through?" "Everything we've been through?" I echoed, incredulous. "You mean your affair?" Ted slammed his hand on the table, making me flinch. "For God's sake, Natalie, I made a mistake. How many times do I have to apologize? It's not just about the affair," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "It's about years of neglect, of feeling like I don't matter." "That's not fair," Ted growled. "I've provided for this family, given you everything you could want. Except respect," I shot back, "except partnership." Ted's eyes narrowed. "Is that what this is about? You feeling unappreciated? Maybe if you'd put as much effort into our marriage as you did into being a martyr, we wouldn't be in this mess." His words hit me like a physical blow. I stood up, hands shaking. "Get out." "This is my house," Ted sneered. "You don't get to tell me what to do." "Your house?" I laughed bitterly. "The one I've kept running while you were off playing house with your mistress?" Ted's face flushed with rage. He took a step toward me, and for a moment I was afraid he might strike me. Instead, he spun on his heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I collapsed into the chair, tears streaming down my face. How had we come to this? The man I'd loved, the father of my children, now a stranger filled with anger and resentment. My phone buzzed, startling me. It was a text from my sister Leah. "How are you holding up? Want to talk?" Relief washed over me. I needed my big sister now more than ever. An hour later, I sat on Leah's couch, pouring out my heart. She listened patiently, her kind eyes filled with concern. "Oh, Natalie," she sighed when I finished. "I'm so sorry you're going through this, but honey, you need to stand up for yourself. Ted doesn't get to dictate your worth." I nodded, wiping away tears. I know, but it's hard. We've been together so long, and the boys. Leah took my hands in hers. Listen to me. You deserve happiness. You deserve respect, and your boys deserve to see their mother valued and strong. But what if I can't do it? I whispered. What if I'm not strong enough? You are, Leah said firmly. You're one of the strongest women I know. You just need to remember that. As I drove home, Leah's words echoed in my mind. She was right. I'd let Ted chip away at my confidence for too long. It was time to reclaim my power. I walked into the house, steeling myself for another confrontation. But the sight that greeted me stopped me in my tracks. Ted sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. For everything. You're right, I've been a terrible husband. I don't deserve you. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to say we could work it out. But then I remembered Leah's words. You're right, I said quietly. You don't deserve me. Not anymore. Ted's face crumpled. Natalie, please, I'll do anything. Go to counseling, quit my job, whatever you want. I shook my head. It's too late, Ted. I've made my decision. As I turned to leave the room, Ted called out, desperation in his voice. What about the boys? Don't they deserve a chance at a whole family? I paused, my hand on the doorframe. They deserve parents who respect each other, who show them what real love looks like. I looked back at him, my voice steady. And that's what I intend to give them, with or without you. With those words, I walked away, leaving Ted and the remnants of our broken marriage behind. For the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope for the future. My future, on my own terms. I watched the boys' faces as we pulled up to Leah's house, our car packed with hastily thrown-together suitcases. Jake, at 10, wore a frown of confusion. 6-year-old Ethan's eyes were wide with excitement at the prospect of a vacation at Aunt Leah's. Mom, why isn't Dad coming? Jake asked as we unloaded the car. I swallowed hard. Dad needs to stay at our house for work, sweetie. We're going to have a little break here with Aunt Leah. Jake's frown deepened, but he didn't press further. I silently thanked God for small mercies. Leah enveloped us in a warm hug as we entered. Welcome, troops. I've got the guest rooms all set up for you. As the boys explored the house, Leah pulled me aside. How are you holding up? I felt my carefully constructed facade crumble. I don't know how I'm going to do this, Leah. I haven't worked in years. How am I supposed to support the boys on my own? Leah squeezed my hand. One step at a time, sis. Remember Dana from your old job? She called earlier asking about you. Said there might be some freelance work available if you're interested. Hope fluttered in my chest. Really? I haven't done marketing in so long. You're still sharp as a tack, Leah insisted. Give her a call. What have you got to lose? That night, after the boys were asleep, I dialed Dana's number with trembling fingers. Natalie? Dana's warm voice brought back memories of late nights brainstorming campaigns. I'm so glad you called. How are you? I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I'm going through some changes. Leah mentioned you might have some work? Absolutely, Dana said. We've got a new client who needs a fresh perspective. It's remote work, perfect for juggling with family commitments. My heart raced. That sounds amazing, Dana, but it's been years since I've worked. I'm not sure I'm qualified anymore. Dana's laugh was reassuring. Natalie, you were one of the best in the business. That talent doesn't just disappear. Why don't you start with a small project and see how it goes? We chatted for an hour, discussing the project and catching up. By the time we hung up, I felt a glimmer of my old confidence returning. The next morning, I woke early to start work before the boys were up. As I logged into my laptop, a notification popped up, an email from Ted. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won out. I opened it. Natalie, I can't believe you just left like that. What about our family, our vows? You're abandoning your duties as a wife and mother. The boys need stability, not your selfish whims. Come home immediately, or there will be consequences. Ted, rage boiled in my veins. How dare he? After everything he'd done, he had the audacity to accuse me of abandonment? I was halfway through a scathing reply when Ethan's sleepy voice interrupted me. Mommy, can we have pancakes? I closed the laptop, pushing thoughts of Ted aside. Of course, sweetie. Let's wake up Jake and Aunt Leah and make it a pancake party. As we gathered in Leah's sunny kitchen, the boys giggling as they mixed batter and made a mess, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This was what mattered, not Ted's accusations or my fears about the future. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Ted. "Where are you? We need to talk. Now." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to lash out, to hurt him as he'd hurt me. But as I watched the boys playing in Leah's backyard, I knew I had to be the bigger person. I typed out a simple response. "We're safe. I'll have my lawyer contact you about arrangements for the boys." As I hit send, a sense of calm washed over me. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. It wouldn't be easy, but with Leah's support and this new opportunity with Dana, I finally felt hope for the future. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and made a silent promise to myself and my sons. We would not just survive this, we would thrive. I was in the middle of a conference call with Dana and our new client when the doorbell rang. Leah answered it, and moments later I heard raised voices from the foyer. "Where is she?" Ted's angry voice carried through the house. My heart raced. I quickly muted my microphone and whispered to Dana, "Family emergency. I'll call you back." Stepping into the hallway, I saw Ted towering over Leah, his face red with anger. "Ted," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "What are you doing here?" He whirled to face me. "What am I doing here? What are you doing here, Natalie? You can't just take the boys and disappear." "I told you we were safe," I replied, fighting to keep my voice calm. I needed time to think. Ted scoffed. "Think about what? How to destroy our family." Leah stepped between us. "I think you should leave, Ted. This isn't the time or place for this conversation." "Stay out of this, Leah," Ted snapped. "This is between me and my wife." "Don't talk to her like that," I said, anger rising in my chest. "Leah's been more supportive than you've been in years." Ted's eyes narrowed. "Oh, so that's what this is about? You feeling unsupported? I work my ass off to provide for this family, and this is the thanks I get." "Provide?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean control. You've spent years making me dependent on you, isolating me from my career, my friends." "I gave you everything," Ted shouted. "A beautiful home, vacations, the best schools for the boys, and you throw it all away for what? Some misguided notion of independence?" The boys appeared at the top of the stairs, wide-eyed and frightened. Seeing them, I made a decision. "Boys, go to your room," I said firmly. "Mom and Dad need to talk." Once they were out of earshot, I turned back to Ted. "This isn't working. I want a divorce." The words hung in the air between us. Ted's face paled. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious," I replied. "I've already spoken to a lawyer." "A lawyer?" Ted's voice rose again. "So you've been planning this all along? While I've been trying to save our marriage?" I shook my head. "Save our marriage? By blaming me for your affair? By trying to control my every move?" "I made a mistake with Lisa," Ted said, his tone softening. "But I love you, Natalie. We can work this out." For a moment, I wavered. Then I remembered the years of neglect, the constant belittling, the way he'd made me doubt myself. "No, Ted," I said quietly. "We can't. It's too late." Ted's face hardened. "Fine. If that's how you want to play it, I'll see you in court. Don't expect to take me for everything I'm worth." "This isn't about money," I replied. "It's about respect, something you clearly don't understand." As Ted stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Leah wrapped me in a hug. "I'm proud of you, sis," she whispered. Upstairs, I found the boys huddled together on Jake's bed. "Is Dad gone?" Ethan asked, his voice small. I sat down, pulling them both close. "Yes, sweetie, Dad's gone home." "Are we going back?" Jake asked. I took a deep breath. "No, honey, we're going to stay here with Aunt Leah for a while. Dad and we need some time apart." "Are you getting divorced?" Jake's eyes filled with tears. My heart broke, but I knew I had to be honest. "Yes, sweetheart, but I want you both to know that this doesn't change how much we love you. You're the most important things in our lives." As I held my boys, comforting them through their tears, I felt a surge of determination. I would build a new life for us, one filled with love, respect, and independence. It wouldn't be easy, but looking at Jake and Ethan, I knew it would be worth it. Later that night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Ted. "This isn't over. I'll fight you every step of the way." I stared at the screen, a mix of fear and resolve washing over me. Then I typed out a response. "Bring it on. I'm done being your doormat." As I hit send, I knew there was no turning back. The battle for my freedom and my children's future had begun. 6 months had passed since I'd left Ted, and life had taken on a new rhythm. I'd thrown myself into work, quickly becoming one of Dana's most valuable freelancers. The boys were settling into their new school, making friends and slowly healing from the upheaval of our family. I was in the middle of a crucial client presentation when my phone buzzed insistently. Ignoring it, I focused on my pitch. As soon as I ended the call, I saw a flurry of missed calls and texts from Leah. "Natalie, call me ASAP. It's about Ted." My heart raced as I dialed her number. "Leah, what's wrong?" "Ted's here," she said, her voice tight. "He's demanding to see the boys, says he has court papers." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "What? No, that's impossible. We have a custody agreement." "He's saying you violated it by moving without his consent. Natalie, he's threatening to take the boys." Panic clawed at my throat. "I'm on my way. Don't let him near them." I sped to Leah's house, my mind whirling. How could this be happening? We'd been so careful with the legal arrangements. As I pulled up, I saw Ted's car in the driveway. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself for the confrontation. The scene inside was chaos. Ted stood in the living room waving papers and shouting. Leah stood between him and the stairs, where I could hear the boys crying. "Ted, stop this!" I yelled, slamming the door behind me. "You're scaring the children." He whirled to face me, eyes blazing. "You've left me no choice, Natalie. You think you can just take my sons and cut me out of their lives?" "That's not what I'm doing," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "We have an agreement. You see them every other weekend." "An agreement you broke when you moved them without my permission," Ted snarled. "I have rights, and I'm going to exercise them." I snatched the papers from his hand, scanning them quickly. My blood ran cold. He was right. There was a clause about relocating without mutual consent. "This is low, even for you," I hissed, "using the boys as pawns in your game." Ted's face softened slightly. "I don't want to do this, Natalie. Come home. We can work this out." For a moment, I wavered. The thought of losing my children was unbearable. But then I remembered why I'd left. The years of emotional abuse, the affair, the way he'd slowly chipped away at my self-worth. "No," I said firmly. "We're not coming back. This is our home now." Ted's expression hardened. "Fine, then I'll see you in court. I'll fight for full custody if I have to." As he stormed out, I collapsed onto the couch, my body shaking. Leah sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "What am I going to do?" I whispered. "I can't lose them, Leah." "We'll figure it out," she said. "I'll call my lawyer friend. We'll fight this." I nodded, trying to believe her words. But doubt gnawed at me. How could I compete with Ted's resources? His connections? The sound of small feet on the stairs made me look up. Jake and Ethan stood there, tears streaking their faces. "Mom?" Jake's voice trembled. "Are we going to have to live with Dad?" I held out my arms, and they ran to me. Holding them close, I made a silent vow. I would not let Ted win. I would not let him destroy the new life we'd built. "No, sweetie," I said. My voice stronger than I felt. "We're staying right here. I promise." As I comforted my boys, my mind raced. I needed a plan. I needed to prove I could provide for them, that this new life was better for everyone. My phone buzzed, a text from Dana. "Client loved your pitch. They want to offer you a full-time position." I stared at the screen, a glimmer of hope piercing through the darkness. This could be it, the key to securing our future. Looking at my sons, then at Leah, I felt a surge of determination. Ted might have money and power, but I had love, resilience, and a newfound strength he couldn't begin to understand. The battle for my children's future had begun, and I was ready to fight with everything I had. 1 year after leaving Ted, I stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at me. Gone was the timid housewife, replaced by a confident professional in a crisp blazer. I'd not only accepted Dana's full-time offer, but had quickly climbed the ranks to become a senior marketing executive. As I adjusted my necklace, a gift from Leah to celebrate my promotion, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my lawyer. "Urgent news about Ted. Call ASAP." My stomach clenched. The custody battle had been brutal, with Ted using every dirty trick in the book. But we'd been holding our ground thanks to my new job and the stability we'd built. "What's happened?" I asked as soon as my lawyer picked up. "Ted's filed for emergency custody," she said, her voice grim. He's claiming you're an unfit mother due to your work schedule. The room spun. What? That's ridiculous. I've bent over backwards to balance work and the boys. I know, Natalie, but he's presenting a compelling case. We need to meet immediately to strategize. As I hung up, Leah appeared in the doorway, concern etched on her face. What's wrong? I filled her in, my voice shaking. How can he do this? After everything he's put us through? Leah's eyes flashed with anger. That bastard. He can't stand seeing you succeed without him. Just then, Jake and Ethan burst into the room, backpacks on and ready for school. Their smiles faded as they saw my face. Mom? Jake asked. Are you okay? I forced a smile. Everything's fine, sweetie. Just some work stress. As I hugged them goodbye, my heart ached. How could I tell them their father was trying to take them away? The day passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls. By the time I got home, I was exhausted and terrified. Leah was waiting with a glass of wine and a sympathetic ear. I don't know if I can do this anymore, I confessed, tears streaming down my face. Maybe I should just give in, go back to Ted. Leah grabbed my shoulders. Don't you dare. You've come too far to give up now. Just then my phone rang. It was Dana. Natalie, I hate to do this, but we need you in New York next week for the Johnson pitch. It's make or break for the company. My heart sank. A week away from the boys, right when Ted was pushing for custody. But if I said no, I could lose the job that was keeping us afloat. I'll be there, I said, my voice hollow. As I hung up, Leah looked at me with concern. You can't go. Not now. I have to, I replied. If I lose this job, Ted wins. He'll prove I can't provide for the boys. The next morning, as I prepared to leave for work, Jake appeared in the kitchen, his young face serious. Mom, are you and Dad fighting again? I knelt down, meeting his eyes. Honey, your dad and we're having some disagreements about where you and Ethan should live. Jake's lip trembled. I don't want to live with Dad. I want to stay here with you and Aunt Leah. I pulled him close, fighting back tears. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that happens. I promise. As I watched Jake board the school bus, my resolve strengthened. I couldn't let Ted win. Not when the boys' happiness was at stake. That evening, as I packed for New York, my lawyer called again. Natalie, Ted's lawyer, reached out. They're proposing a settlement. My heart raced. What kind of settlement? Full custody to Ted with visitation rights for you. The room spun. No, absolutely not. Natalie, given your work commitments and the upcoming trip, it might be worth considering. No, I interrupted, my voice steel. I will not give up my children. Tell Ted and his lawyers we'll see them in court. As I hung up, I caught sight of myself in the mirror again. The woman staring back was fierce, determined, and ready for battle. Bring it on, Ted, I whispered. I'm not the woman you married anymore, and I'm sure as hell not going down without a fight. I stood outside the courtroom, my heart pounding. Today was the final custody hearing, the culmination of months of legal battles and emotional turmoil. As I smoothed my blazer, Leah squeezed my hand. You've got this, sis, she whispered. No matter what happens in there, you've already won by becoming the strong woman you are today. I nodded, drawing strength from her words. As we entered the courtroom, I caught sight of Ted. He looked haggard, his once crisp suit rumpled, and his eyes bloodshot. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy, quickly replaced by steely resolve. The judge called the court to order, and Ted's lawyer began his final argument. He painted a picture of me as a career-obsessed mother who had abandoned her family. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to scream out in protest. When it was my turn to speak, I stood tall, meeting the judge's eyes. Your Honor, a year ago, I was a different woman. I had lost myself in a marriage that had become toxic and controlling. But leaving Ted wasn't about abandoning my family, it was about saving it. I gestured to the portfolio my lawyer had submitted. In the past year, I've built a successful career, providing stability and financial security for my children. But more importantly, I've shown them what it means to be strong, to stand up for yourself, and to create a loving home. As I spoke, I saw Ted's face crumple. For the first time, I realized he wasn't just angry, he was broken. The judge listened intently, asking pointed questions about my work schedule and the boys' well-being. When she finally called a recess to consider her decision, I felt drained but hopeful. In the hallway, Ted approached me, his eyes red-rimmed. Natalie, can we talk? Leah started to intervene, but I held up a hand. It's okay, I've got this. Ted and I found a quiet corner. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. I'm sorry. For everything. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you, hurting our family, until it was too late. I studied his face, seeing the man I'd once loved beneath the anger and bitterness. Ted, I'm sorry too. Not for leaving, but for not being strong enough to stand up to you sooner. Maybe if I had, things would have been different. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I've lost everything, Natalie. The company's on the verge of bankruptcy. Lisa left months ago, but losing the boys, that's killing me. In that moment, I saw our entire history flash before my eyes. The good times and the bad, the love and the pain. And I made a decision. Ted, I don't want to take the boys away from you. They need their father. But they also need a healthy, stable environment. Can we find a way to co-parent that doesn't involve courts and lawyers? Hope flickered in his eyes. You'd be willing to try? I nodded. For the boys, and for us, not as a couple, but as parents who want the best for their children. When the judge called us back in, we approached her together. Our lawyers looked confused as we explained our desire to work out a co-parenting agreement outside of court. The judge smiled. I'm pleased to see you both putting your children's needs first. I'll grant a continuance to allow you to work out the details. But, she added, her gaze stern, if you can't come to an agreement, I will make a final ruling. As we left the courthouse, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Leah was waiting, her face a mix of concern and curiosity. Are you sure about this? She asked as I explained what had happened. I nodded, watching Ted walk to his car. It won't be easy, but it's the right thing to do. For all of us. That evening, as I tucked the boys into bed, Jake looked up at me with serious eyes. Mom, is Dad coming back? I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. No, sweetie, Dad and I aren't getting back together. But we're going to work on being better parents to you and Ethan. You'll still see Dad regularly, and we'll all work on being a family, just in a different way. Jake nodded, seeming to understand. As I kissed him goodnight, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Later, standing on Leah's porch and looking up at the stars, I reflected on the journey of the past year. I'd lost a husband but found myself. I'd faced my greatest fears and come out stronger. And most importantly, I'd created a new kind of family, one built on love, respect, and resilience. As I breathed in the cool night air, I smiled. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, I was excited about the future, my future, our future. And it was bright with possibility.